So guys, welcome back to the Road to Recovery podcast. I'm your host Tommy. Today on my solo without Ryan. We'll not go into that, but today I'm actually glad to have Joe from Dare and Discover. I think the first time I used to watch your channel, it was the Strength Diaries, I think you were called then.
Yeah.
But today, actually, funnily enough, I found out we've actually got two things in common. We're both a certain age this year, but I won't mention that number. we both like peanut butter and chocolate, so that's at least a good positive anyway. But thanks for coming on, Joe. It's really great to have you on. I think just what we're going to kind of start with is a little about what you do. Obviously, you're a mental health professional. You're into fitness and nutrition as well. And obviously you had an eating disorder in the past. So I'll just kind of let you take the floor and talk a bit about where you've started from to where you are now.
Yeah, so thanks, Tommy. I was really honoured when you contacted me 3 weeks ago. It was just lovely to hear.
I think a lot of people kind of need to hear more about your story, because it's something that a lot of people need to hear, and the more people can hear about you, the better.
Oh, thank you. So I mean, I'm a psychologist working in. I'm in the UK. I suppose I should sort of put the caveat in. I'm not somebody who works with eating disorders. I'm not. That's not a specialist. But I am somebody who has been through an eating disorder, and I am in recovery for it. So I'll talk a bit more about that. But my channel, my YouTube channel is. I suppose it started off health and fitness and sort of linking mental health and physical fitness. And then I suppose I started to sort of talk a bit more about eating disorders. And then, well, weirdly, it was May this year that I suddenly realised that I'd been in quasi-recovery for about 15 years. And it kind of, hit me in the face a bit. And it was May when I really started going all in with my recovery in terms of just eating unrestricted. And so I'm only 2 months in, so it's early days at the moment. So I mean, in terms of my eating disorder history, my sort of anorexia started when I was in my early 20s. And I remember thinking at that time, well, is it really an eating disorder? Because it doesn't fit the profile of the teenage.
That happens a lot,
Yeah. So, and then when I was 25, I did get to a point. I'd been on a lot of recovery forums, and I got to the point where I was just fed up with the eating disorder, and I did a kind of an all-in. I just started eating properly again. I put on, quite a lot of weight because I'd been, binging and purging and abusing laxatives. So I think, my body was probably in a bit of a bad state. But then I suppose what happened, there was no mental health services in my area for people with eating disorders. I did go and see a psychologist, ironically, but she referred me to a stress management group. And I thought, that is not, I really want to speak to somebody about stress. But I think that was just a reflection of how little was out there at the time. And then I sort of went to see a nutritionist privately. I guess the problem was, and I didn't know it at the time, but she put me on a meal plan, and really that took me back into restriction. So I think by the time I was maybe 26, I'd lost quite a bit of the weight. And I suppose I should say, at no point have I ever been underweight by the classic BMI standards. So again, I suppose from looking at me, you'd never think I'd had an eating disorder, but it was more about the mindset. So I kind of lost weight again. But since that point, and up until recently, really, was only when I realised I'd been in quasi-recovery, because I was still controlling calories. I was still, by no means, I don't think, by the end, by no means my calories were that low, because I was weightlifting, but they were low for me, and they were low for what my body needed, really. But it was 2015 when I started lifting weights, and that really changed everything in terms of my relationship with food and my body, because I started to see food as fuel, and fueling the weightlifting. And also I put on weight at that time, and my body changed, and I was really happy with it. But then, for whatever reason, last year I wasn't happy with my body, and I thought, I'm just going to lose some weight and get lean. And then that took me into I got to the point I lost more weight than I'd wanted to, I think. And I looked back on how I looked, and I thought, I can't believe I looked that slim or that lean, because that wasn't, my body couldn't sustain it. My body was actually crying out for me to eat. It was sending me all sorts of messages to just eat. And but then I got to that point and I was actually afraid to put on weight again. I was in this cycle of, I want to eat more. I know my body needs it, but I really don't want to lose my leanness.
Yeah.
I was frightened of getting too big. And it was one bank holiday, well, it was the May bank holiday this year, where I'd already started to watch some recovery channels, including yours, and that's where I first got introduced to Tabitha Farrar. So I started watching a lot of her
Yeah,
stuff,
she's
and I
great.
think she is, yeah. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, yeah, there's something not quite right here. And I remember I was bored and I made some flapjacks, and I think it was me testing out what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I remember getting them out of the oven and I just wanted to eat the whole lot. And I was in this battle of wanting to eat them and wanting to throw them in the bin and get them out of the house so I didn't eat them. And that was the point I knew I don't want to spend the rest of my life fearing food. I just can't. And I think it just made me realise that I thought I was recovered to a certain level and that was where I would stay and that's all I could ever do.
Yeah,
But then
definitely.
I realised, well, I deserve more than that. I deserve to be recovered. So that's where I am now. So I'm 2 months in. So it's all really new.
I can totally relate to that because I was the same quite a bit as well. I got to the point when I would say I recovered for maybe about 5 years, which I would say I was fully recovered. I was back working and things like that. That was after my first time I actually was diagnosed with having an eating disorder, which was through the loss of my mum.
Yeah.
And that was 2000. And then 2002, I was back working, met my wife, was fine until obviously my wife had miscarriages and ovarian cancer. Then the weight dropped. And then at that point, I went into hospital, got a lot of help and things like that. But I come out and just similar to you, I was kind of stuck at a certain weight and I was what you would say healthy, but never really getting over that point of recovery.
Yeah.
So I think that's what a lot of people go through. It's like the way I always say it, I think you've just got to become been sick and tired, really.
Yeah. And I didn't even realise when I started hearing about the term quasi recovery, I didn't even know there was a term. And it made me realise, God, I've been in this for about 15 years and not really. I just thought I was at a point where this is the best it would ever get in terms of my relationship with food and my body.
Yeah.
And then I thought, no, it can get better because there's all these other people saying that they've done it, and you can get over the other side of it.
Yeah. One of the questions that we actually had was actually talking about quasi recovery. They were actually saying, what's the best approach to that? Because you obviously went all in, but they're saying, is it all in the best approach? Is unrestricted eating the best approach? Is mini mod guidelines the best approach? But in my opinion, I would say it's what's best for you. But
I think what I did, well, first of all, I started off with just because I had my fitness pal on my phone for a year. And I was tracking calories and macros for years, and that started off okay because of the weight training. But then it got to a state I was weighing out ketchup and weighing out salad. It was looking back now, it's ridiculous, but at the time it was so frightening to even just put salad on a plate and not weigh it out. So it started off with me taking my fitness pal off my phone, and I did a week where I didn't track anything, which was scary, but it was so liberating at the same time not to weigh. But I had to, because I got to the end of the week and it was all fine, but I thought, but I don't know how much I'm eating, and I'm worried that my sense of portion size is really not, I think it's off, because I would, I think the eating disorder would more like have me put a smaller portion on my plate than, a bigger portion. So what I did, I still do it and I do want to move away from this, but I just kept not a running total, but writing down estimates of the calories of what I'm eating. And then at the end of the day, once I'm kind of just going to bed, just seeing how much I'm eating, just to sort of get a sense of how much my body's wanting, but not, I'm trying to follow mental hunger, because it's that kind of feel physically full, but you're still mentally hungry. So I'm really trying to respond to the mental hunger. But I just didn't trust myself at the beginning that I was eating enough. So I just started writing sort of the estimated calories down to try and just make sure I was getting the minimum. So I did go on the website for the mini mold method. I think it's called homeodynamic recovery method now.
Changed the name up.
so, I mean, they've got, for someone my age, they've got, I think their calorie minimums are 2,500 minimum.
I think for me, myself, I was like 3,500 when I
Yeah.
was doing it, kind of thing, yeah.
I think men's were higher. So I'm hitting that, but I'm going over it. I'm not even, but now I think at the beginning I was making sure I was getting to that and then just carrying on eating. But now I don't even need to sort of keep an eye on that. The amount I'm eating is going over that naturally, so that's okay. I mean, I suppose it is hard because I've heard people say they've eaten, up to 10,000 calories a day, and I don't know. I know at the beginning, I wonder if it's to do with the foods you eat, because at the beginning when I went all in, all I wanted to eat was like peanut butter and chocolate nut butters and just lots of like
I was
cereal.
exactly the same, yeah.
And they're obviously very calorie dense. So
That's
I imagine,
it,
yeah. And I imagine early days, I was probably eating about maybe 5,000 calories, 4.5, 5,000 calories. But that's what my body, I was really listening to my body, and that's what my body was telling me to eat. It wanted the fatty foods. And then it's so weird how it changes. And then I think after maybe, I don't know if it was about 3 or 4 weeks, I started to feel a bit nauseous at the thought of eating peanut butter. And then I switched. Well, actually, early on, the thought of eating vegetables and salad. Oh no, absolutely no way. My body was like, no,
I got a lot of kind of irritable bowel syndrome and things like that. So
yeah,
I was obviously vegan for 3 years nearly, and the
yeah,
first maybe year and a half it was working. My health was really, really good. My weight was going up. Then about 2.5 years in, I started to get an awful lot of health issues and things like that. So now I can't even eat certain vegetables because the minute I introduce them to my body, I start getting bloated and fall to the toilet and things like that. So I don't know why that is, but I've kind of got to watch what I'm eating, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. When I kind of went all in, I guess when I was in my mid-20s, when I started eating again, I couldn't. I remember one evening eating pasta, and it just left me in agony. So I did, at that point, I couldn't. It was gluten that was really upsetting me. And then I think about, I don't know if it was 6, 12 months later, it became dairy. Dairy started really bothering me. But I've tried to eat little bits of gluten now and they're not bothering. So I don't know if I've got maybe a tolerance level and I can't eat over a certain amount of gluten, but there are definitely vegetables that leave me in agony. So like onions, so I just leave them.
Especially things like legumes, like kidney beans and things like that. Big problem.
Yeah. So early sort of days into this sort of recovery this time was no vegetables. It made me feel physically sick, and I just didn't want to touch them. But then more recently, I've moved away from the peanut butters. I'm eating more vegetables, but I'm carbs. Just want loads of carbs. I love butter. After avoiding butter for so long, love butter. I hadn't eaten red meat in quite a while, and I got these like cravings. I wanted a steak, so I was we're having more red meat. So it's really, for me, it's been interesting to see how my body's changing in terms of what it's asking to give it. So I suppose my only fear with in terms of calories and upping the calories, if you do it a little bit at a time, in a way, it feels like you're delaying recovery because your body, your body needs more calories. And I suppose I'm a bit of a believer in sometimes you just got to jump in and do it with both feet, because if you toe in, you can get the fear and then back off. And there'll be, there's going to be times during this that you question, should I carry on with it? Because, well, I'm basing this on my experience, because I think, God, can I carry on with this? This is really difficult, mainly because of the body image stuff. But I'm too far in now. I've got to keep going, because I'd just waste all this time so far. But everybody's different. I suppose you've got to, it's like Tabitha says, isn't it? There's no one way to recover.
Exactly.
But I think she's also said, if you do it this way, you get it done quicker.
And that's the thing, kind of like you said a little while ago there, that you always put it off. You always say, I'm going to do it tomorrow, but tomorrow kind of never really comes.
Yeah.
It just becomes the next day and the next day and constant.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I was, when I was worried about putting on the weight, increasing my calories even by a small amount, relatively small amount, that was so frightening. I think if I'd have done it like that, I think I probably would have got stuck at a certain point and not wanted to increase anymore, because I'd have been worried about how much weight I was putting on. Whereas at least I've gone all in, and this is what's happening. And yeah,
that's fantastic. I think that's actually the best way, really. Just getting it in, getting it done, because the quicker you get it done, the quicker you're going to be less likely to get health complications following eating disorder.
Yeah, I think you have to be. I mean, I'm not. I suppose I was never underweight, but I suppose you've got to think about if people are severely underweight, the refeeding syndrome. So I think if you are in that point, it's better to get medical support.
That's what I said to somebody the other day. They were actually asking this question about this, and I said to them, like, I had refeeding syndrome in the past myself, and the only way to do that is obviously be getting like dietetic support and things like that, even if that is in the community or whatever. But doing it yourself's probably a bit of a risk.
Yeah. So if you are at that sort of point, I'd sort of say get some medical intervention. But I wasn't. I was at a, I don't know what's normal, but you know what I mean. I wasn't underweight. I was underweight for probably me, for what I need to be, but I wasn't at a dangerous point by any stretch. So, and I've had no symptoms that are causing me concern. They're all symptoms that other people have had. So there's nothing out of the ordinary going on.
But I think that's the kind of biggest problem with the eating disorder kind of services, is that everything's based on weight, because it's not really about that. It's about the problems that's going on in your head.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, go on, sorry.
Sorry, when you go.
I was just going to say, I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was taken to the doctor by a family member because they were worried about me, and the doctor put me on the scale, and I wasn't underweight. So he was, and he sort of said, well, you know, what's going on? And I just lied and said, look, I've just wanted to lose a bit of weight, and it's fine now. And he accepted that, because he could see there was nothing wrong physically. I was in the BMI, but it's, there was no questions about how I was feeling or what was going on, inside. And I think they still miss that now, don't they?
Yeah, and the one thing I would say about like inpatient treatment as well, from my personal experience, maybe it's not everybody's, but you kind of go into hospital, and I was in, like, I would say maybe 12 different times. And every single time I was taken into hospital, I was just basically in there just to be fattened up, and I was sent back out into the community with the same problems that I had before I went in there. So it was just like a revolving door constantly, and it got to the point I basically had to work in things myself, because I just wasn't getting that help to deal with the actual problems that was causing the disorder.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when you think about it, like we're a lot more aware now, I think, that, eating disorders are a mental health condition, but we treat them as though they're a physical health condition by getting people up to a healthy weight, and then off you go. Whereas there's just so much more sort of psychological, it's like, rewiring, isn't it? All of that needs to kind of be happening as well.
Exactly.
So getting weight restored is just the first bit, really, and then it's working on the psychological side.
It's like Tabitha says, nutritional rehabilitation first, then working on the neural rewiring.
Yeah. So her book's been my Bible.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely great. Yeah, it helped me massively.
Yeah.
I think that this is a great point. Obviously, the feelings and behaviours about ourselves, I think that's really important as well, kind of like how we to kind of detach ourselves from them, because I think as well, I'm always one that looks, even at this moment in time, I always look for the worst case scenario and everything. And I don't know if that's something you can relate to, but I've kind of found that, and a lot of people that have been in the comments section of our videos have said this. They said, is this something that is generally everybody that has eating disorders, do they have that?
Yeah.
Is that something you can relate to, and have you got any kind of advice on how to best manage that for people?
Do you mean worst case scenario in terms of symptoms, or like recovery, or?
It's basically like our feelings about ourselves and how that kind of acts out into behaviours. Like, you always think the worst about yourself, like any situation, like something's going to go bad. Like, say you're doing an exam or something, and you think I'm going to fail or whatever. I can get that feeling myself.
Yeah, I'm one of the biggest, in psychology we call it catastrophizing. So it's like
All
thinking
right, yeah.
worst is going to happen. I mean, I've done that, God, since I was young, I think. And I think the only way I've come to deal with it is really if you can catch yourself doing it and just say, stop, just stop, take a step back and breathe, because the mind is such a powerful thing. And just because we're thinking something, it doesn't mean it's true. But we're very, our brains are wired to look out for threat in the environment. So I think that's why we do tend to go into worst case scenario about things. And I think one of I suppose how it translates throughout my recovery is, I suppose, just wondering, is this going to end? Is it, am I always going to be eating this much? Am I going to get to a point where I'm not thinking about food anymore? And I keep, I suppose I would just keep watching the recovery channels, and because watching people like Tabitha and her, just her videos really gives me a lot of reassurance that it will stop at some point.
Yeah.
But I've just got to be patient, and I think being patient is a big part of the process. I'm still learning to be patient, and there are days where I do sort of, I do have body image issues, which is really, there are some days where I can look at myself and think, you look fine, and what's going on now is it's your body's repairing and it's absolutely fine. And then, well, even the same day, but later on in the day, I'll look at myself and think, I look awful. I hate myself. I hate how I look. So I know that there is that struggle going on because it's so inconsistent. And I think I just have to say to myself, you just got to ride this out, because you'll get through it. You just have to be patient and just get on with it. Eat, as Tabitha would say.
I can definitely relate to that, because I was exactly the same, and I would say in the last probably year, I've been the best I've ever been. I've got no eating disorder voice. I've got no body images. I constantly actually like seeing the scale going up, because I'm at this moment in time, I'm trying to gain muscle, so I'm eating a lot more calories than probably most people are. But that's a big difference. And I think for me, strength training was probably about the biggest thing that actually helped my recovery, because like you spoke about earlier, I knew that I had to fuel myself to obviously be able to do the exercise. So it kind of went hand in hand. But a lot of people are kind of caught up in this, that they've actually said in the chat a lot of times, look, how do you navigate exercise? How do you manage to do it with an eating disorder? And we actually had Miles Sandoval on a few weeks ago. She was talking about how to kind of navigate exercise, how to make it so you can still do it in recovery, but learn to do it to move your body in a healthy way. But how did it kind of help you, and how did you obviously get into it? And
well, I saw that episode with Miles, and I suppose what I would say first of all is that I think you have to assess your relationship with exercise in the context of your eating disorder, because I've decided to carry on exercising. However, my weight training has reduced a lot in terms of how heavy I'm lifting. I'm lifting more for movement, and I'm responding. I suppose I'm listening to my body to tell me what is too much and what is okay. And I think that's really important. But I've always known my exercise has never been linked. So I've never sort of eaten something and then thought, oh, I need to go running, or I need to do something to turn it off. And I've never, say if like there's been a meal, I'm going out for a meal or something, I've never thought, right, I need to up my exercise this week to offset that. There's never been that kind of connection for me. So I've never seen the need to stop, but I did still sort of sit down and think to myself, just to make sure, look, I need to make sure this is the right decision. I don't want this to be the eating disorder voice convincing me that I'm carrying on. So I think people, I suppose, need to have an honest conversation with themselves about, how would they if they have to stop exercising, how does that make them feel? So for me, my weight training is I have a coach. He sends me, like, this is since I've worked with him for the last 4 or 5 years, he sends me the lifts that I do. I go and do them, and then that's it. I forget about it. I don't even think about it for the rest of the day. I have rest days in the week. It causes me no anxiety. So there's not that need. My way of compensating. So if I thought I'd eaten too much one day, I would eat less the next. So the food was the kind of the way that I would compensate, if you like. So maybe, people asking yourself, do you use exercise to compensate for if you perceive that you've overeaten, or you've eaten a fear food or something that's forbidden? Do you increase your exercise in anticipation of food that you might eat in the future, like going out for a meal? If you don't exercise, how does this cause you anxiety? If something gets in the way of you exercising, like a commitment or an emergency, what does this generate in you? Does it generate anxiety? And just just really thinking about it honestly, because I read, I've got Jennifer Gaudiani's book, Sick Enough, and she does advocate for exercise, but planned and more for the movement. Obviously, I don't think she would advocate for intense exercise, but she says something. I was trying to read it before we sort of got on about, if you stop exercise for people in recovery, you are making that link, you're reinforcing that link between exercise and calories. Whereas I think from what she's saying is that exercise should be for movement and the joy of movement, and moving your body, and I do think exercise is good for our mental health.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that, especially in the lockdown and things like that, just how important exercise actually is.
Yeah. I think it's just being honest with yourself. So for me at the moment, I'm moving more for movement. I'm lifting for movement. I've reduced the intensity of my lifts, and it's ironic really, because I think my coach sort of thought, wow, she's eating all these calories, so she's just going to get stronger. And I thought, yeah, I'll get stronger, but in fact, I don't know if my strength has gone down, but my body's willingness to lift as much as it was is just like, and I respect that, and I'm not going to interfere with that. I'm fine. I'm just it's nice just to keep lifting. So I'm not going to get in the way of that. I'm going to listen to what my body's telling me, which I think, I've done 15, 20 years of not listening to it. So I think it's about time I listen to it.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same, but I actually had like exercise addiction. That's what I actually had, because I was a semi-professional footballer. So exercise has always been in my life. But when my mum died, I thought I was basically just getting fitter. And what I was doing was I was exercising up to, like, it started off like 5 hours a day, then it went up to 10. Then it was even during the night when people were sleeping and things like that. And I obviously had to go back to exercise in the early stages of my recovery, because I obviously had the heart attack and obviously had severe osteoporosis. So I was kind of prescribed weight-bearing exercise to kind of cure that as well. So I had to obviously integrate it, even though having that in the past. But through that, I actually basically broke my exercise addictions, which made a massive difference. And now I can go days without exercise. I could leave it if I wanted to, but I do like maybe a few days a week. I lay off days, I have rest days. Doesn't bother me if I miss it out or anything like that. But like you said, if something comes up and it disrupts your exercise, are you happy with it? Are you okay with that? Does it stress you out? That's when you know there's a problem there.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because sometimes I've kind of, I do go on a lot of the recovery channels, and I suppose for my own reassurance as well, and trying to get information. Sometimes I think we can read too much and get ourselves all confused about it. And I've done that because I'm thinking, well, am I doing this right? Am I, am I doing recovery right? I've got no idea. And I'm not saying people should do it the way I'm doing it, because this is the first time, so I'm learning as I go through. And it may be I'm open to the idea, if I think at any point exercise is hindering my recovery, I'll stop it, and that doesn't cause me any anxiety. So I think it's all about keeping an eye on it as you go through, and monitoring it as you go through. And if you do decide to carry on with it, listen to your body. I think it's really important throughout the whole thing that you listen to what your body's telling you, because it knows what it's doing. It knows what it needs. It can be confusing. I think if you read up on so much, people have different opinions on exercise and all sorts, and calories in recovery. So I think I don't know. You've kind of got to make your own decisions about that. I suppose, assuming you don't need a medical team, go with your medical team if you're under a medical team. But if you're doing it because you can on your own, then you know, you'll choose a course and just see how it goes. And if it's not working, you can change it. It's no, you know,
Yeah,
it's not
I
a big
think
deal.
it's as well, like you said, it's kind of like everybody's got a different message. So a lot of
Yeah,
people are confused because this professional on YouTube says one thing, this other professional says another, and they
yeah,
think, am I doing this right? Because it's slightly different from them and it doesn't seem to be working.
yeah,
It's just about finding what's balanced for you and what works for you. I think that's the
yeah,
most important thing, and just kind of take little bits of everybody's experience and
yeah.
take from it what you want.
Yeah, yeah, because we're all coming from different points, aren't we? You know, in terms of what our eating disorder journey has been, the starting point we're at, and all sorts of things. So we can't. It's really hard. I think, you know, even I've tried to get reassurance by looking at what other people have done and how long it's taken them to get kind of fully nutritionally rehabilitated. But it's like, but they're different, and I'm different. So you can get a rough guideline maybe, but
So
it's
would you ever did you ever have like a therapist and things like that, or did you ever go inpatient or anything like that? No.
No, I've never been inpatient. I mean, I have had therapy over the years, but ironically, not for my eating disorder, more for other things that I think may have triggered it, but not for the actual eating disorder, which is really
That's even harder then, because you've basically been doing it on your own, really.
yeah, yeah, it's really really odd. I've only just thought of that. I've never really. But I think maybe that was because I was in quasi recovery, so I thought I'm at a point where yeah, it bothers me now and again, which wasn't
Yeah.
the case, because what I'd done is just engineered my life so that I wasn't putting myself in many situations which caused me anxiety around food. That's all I'd done. So I'd created this sense of, yeah, it only bothers me now and again. But actually, if I'd have put myself in those situations more often, it probably would have made me more aware that I needed to do something about it a lot quicker. So yeah, I suppose because I was in this, yeah, I'm okay, it never really came up in my therapy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, one of the other questions I was going to ask you, and it was somebody that asked it, they said that they've never done like in therapy either, and they don't obviously have a therapist. They're basically trying to recover on their own,
Yeah.
and they don't know if they're eating enough calories. They're not sure how to best to go at do it, and they wanted to know what's the best. Am I best tracking calories? Am I best? Is there a way to do it that not to track calories but still
Yeah.
get the amount of food that's needed?
Yeah, I think for me, this is just my experience. So, you know, people can, you know, take it or leave it. But
Yeah.
for me, it was important to track for a while because I wanted to make sure. So I was going by the mini-mord recovery at minimums because I didn't have anything else to go by. I didn't really, because you know, I thought the calories that I'd been on was enough, and clearly they weren't. So I thought, well, what is enough? So it gave me some reassurance to know, okay, I'm going to make sure I at least hit this amount and then carry on responding to my hunger. So I think if that, you know, if that helps, go with those minimums, but they are minimums. I think that's what they're trying to
Yeah.
emphasize. Don't think you hit 2.5 or whatever the minimum is for your age group. Don't hit that and think, oh, that's it. I can stop here. You need, because it's what I was doing was going up to 2.5 and then keep responding to the mental hunger, because I was rarely getting any physical hunger, and I'm still not really. The only time I get physical hunger signals is first thing in the morning when I've been to sleep, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry now. So I rarely get them in the day. So I still am. I'm really having to listen to the mental hunger. So I think tracking initially, I think it can be helpful. Some people say no, you should get away from it, and I don't necessarily think that's helpful, because or
No.
say from my experience, my view of portion sizes and food amounts was so skewed. When I first started eating the minimums, I was just amazed at how much food that was. I couldn't believe it. I thought, how where does all this food come from? Is it so much food, or it feels like so much food? So I think starting off to track, I don't think you need to be tracking macros or anything like that. The body does not care at this point what, you know, just eat. But
Exactly.
choose high calorie foods, or salads are no good to you in recovery. Eat the high calorie stuff. Your body will tell you what it wants. Your body, and also what I did was, you know, I had some food like fear foods that I, you know, avoided what I did was write lists down of what my fear foods were, and then I went shopping, and it was brilliant. I was like, right, my trolley was just, you know, the government with their guidelines now would be sort of looking at me thinking, well, you need to cut that out, but make the lists of all the foods that you've been fearful of. And you know, my sort of philosophy is just face them head on, because actually the quicker I got all that out of the way, I don't, you know, I've got all sorts of food in my cupboard now, and this is only 2 months into recovery. I've got all sorts of food in there that I would have been far too frightened to eat before. I would have not been able to have it in the house. It would have caused huge anxiety. I don't care. There's stuff there, to my shame, there is chocolate nut butter in there I haven't even opened because I've not bothered by it. And before, but at the beginning of recovery, I would have been eating that out of the jar. So yeah, tracking calories roughly, and what I do is I tend to underestimate, so that hopefully I've come out with more than what I'm kind of totaling up. So I think tracking initially is good, but I'm sort of 2 months in now, and I want to move away from writing down sort of the calorie amounts, just because I think it might be another way the eating disorder sort of keeping me a bit trapped. But I think tracking has given me a good way of knowing how much food that is, or how much food I can expect to be eating, or I should be eating. And like I say, when you've been in an eating disorder, I think your view of what, you know, how much is enough is very skewed. And also because when you're fullness, when you've not eaten a lot, you get full really quickly. And then what you might do is think, well, I'm really stuffed, so I shouldn't eat anymore. But actually, I think it's because your body's just not, your digestive system isn't used to that much food. So yeah, I think tracking initially is a good idea, but I suppose the goal is to move away from it. And because, you know, your body, I don't suppose, really needs to. Your body knows what it wants and how much it wants eventually, sort of through it. So yeah, I'm 2 months in, and I'm starting to think about just not writing them down. And I can feel, and this is the thing, I can feel a bit of anxiety about letting go. And I think that is the eating disorder. So I know that I have to stop it, because otherwise it's another control, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I was exactly the same. What I did was I tracked calories maybe for about 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I had a set, like maybe about 3 meals for breakfast, 3 meals for lunch. So I had like 3 different options, and the same for dinner, the same for supper. And then from there, I knew that I had the same amount, the same meals that I could make each week, and I just rotate them constantly. So I knew that that meal maybe had like 700 calories, and that made up that. So it was an easier way of doing it than obviously adding in the calories each week. And I think that's probably the way to go, just like kind of having the same meals kind of often if you can, if that works. But obviously you want to be challenging your fear foods like you said. But
I think and that, I suppose it's just keeping an eye, because you can start off on a certain, you know, way of eating. So I'm trying to sort of, for an example, there were foods that I started eating again that they were fear foods, but then they became okay, they became comfortable. So then I had to start thinking, okay, what else? Because there are more foods that I'm not eating that do. It was mainly crisps. Crisps were a big thing for some reason that caused me a lot of anxiety. And I was not forcing myself past hunger, but I was forcing myself to go out and buy them. And, you know, the voice was telling me, you can't eat that full tube of Pringles. And I thought, well, I'm going to, because I can. And I was having to just not listen to the voice and now I can have crisps in the house, and I'm like,
that's great.
I don't really want them. It's amazing to me how quick that can all change. And I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that only happens if you just go all in, because if you do it so gradually, I just think it might get to the point it's overwhelming, and each step is too overwhelming. If you just go all in and face them all, get all your foods that you're fearful of, and just, you know, your body needs it and you deserve it, so eat them. And I think it's great how quick your mind soon adjusts and stops fearing them.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, because it's just like daily repetitions, doing the same thing day over day and out, and before you know it's just another healthy behaviour. But it's the worry about it, doing it first beforehand. If you let that overwhelm you, it never really happens.
And I remember there was, I can't remember what food, I remember looking I don't know why I looked at the calorie label of it, but I remember looking at the calorie label. I think it was actually a hot cross bun. I'd never allowed myself hot cross buns. And I managed to find these gluten-free ones, which are really nice. But I looked at the calorie amount. I thought, well, that's not that much. But I remember thinking in my eating disorder, if I used to go and look at them in the supermarket, looking at the calorie label and thinking, oh, that's too much. So it's so weird how your mind starts shifting towards, that's not that bad. And I don't know if that's because, obviously when you've kind of restricted for so long, your mind, I was getting huge brain fog. I was not thinking clearly. I wasn't remembering things. And I wonder if you kind of, your view of the reality is quite skewed in terms of food and thinking about food and calories. And, since I've been eating more, that's really shifted. So
Fantastic. Yeah, I was kind of the same. I didn't have that really at the start of my eating disorder, but last year when I left like veganism and things like that, I was getting like brain fog, memory loss and things. And it basically just because my body wasn't everything that was taken in, most of it just wasn't absorbing, but the exact same thing. And I think a lot of people can obviously relate to that.
yeah. No, I think it just shows you how amazing the body is, I think, because there's so much, I can tell there's so much going on. I'm hot a lot of the time. I'm having hot flat flushes, especially at night. I think that's a common thing. And, as long as it's telling me that my body's doing stuff, and that's absolutely fine. I've just got to let it get on with it. But yeah, I suppose when if I do ever feel doubts, I just think on the other side of this is a life, I can remember a time when I didn't worry about food. I just ate it and I enjoyed it and that was it. And I think I just want to get back to that.
That's exactly it. I think the way I used to do it, I used to get a journal and I used to like put 2 different columns, and one was a column about the positives of having eating disorder, and then the other one was the negatives of having eating disorder and what it was taking away with my life. And every single day I reinforced that, because the column and the negatives was stacked, and you'll find that, and it's like it's not a life, it's just a safety blanket that you think is there to comfort you, but it's not. It's actually takes away everything until you've got nothing left really, and if you let it.
Yeah, definitely. And I get the fear. It is so, it is so frightening. But like I say, I think it's like that. I remember reading the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. This was like when I was 19. I remember reading that book, and I really just keep that sort of that mantra in my mind. I think anything that scares you is kind of, it's worth doing it. And recovery is difficult, but I think once you've made the first step into it, I think you can start to see the benefits of it quite quickly. You just have to keep going, and I think remind yourself of what's on the other side of it, because you don't, it's awful, isn't it, just fearing food when food's great, and all the things that I've kind of missed out on over the years, going out with people just because I feared eating out, all of that. It takes such a lot away from you, and you can get that back. And yeah, that's what's waiting on the other side. And I just think that keeps me going.
I think that's something I relate to, like the years that I've lost basically just due through the eating disorder. It's a big regret, and that's why I try to kind of advocate to people, like, recover as quick as you can, do it, because you don't want to get to where I've been and quite a few others, and it's you can't ever get the years back, but you can still be as good a person as you can be and make the rest of your life as great as it possibly can.
Yeah. And you can use, I've heard people talk about, I think a lot of people with eating disorders, they're quite, they're quite determined, because we've been so determined to sort of stay within the eating disorder, but turn that around and use it to your advantage. I think maybe that's why a lot of people fear about, they want to do recovery right, they want to get it right. Well, use that kind of mindset to to do it. Put all your effort into it, because it will just, I think you'll find, like, quite early on, it will make such a huge difference. Like I feel so much better. I think my mind's working so much better. Early in recovery, I felt so tired and exhausted, but actually after about 4 weeks, that kind of went. So there are things that you might think at the beginning, oh, this is just, why am I doing this? And I'm not, I don't know if that fear or that feeling ever goes away, but I think the further you get in, I think that will get better. It's got better for me anyway, and yeah, I've just got to keep pushing on.
Well, I think that's a great point to finish up on, and it's been an absolute joy of having you on. Is there anything you would like to say to anybody that's watching, and how best can they find you on your platforms as well?
Yeah, well, I'm on YouTube under Dare and Discover. I try and put out videos every week. I do work, so sometimes it's a bit hard, but I do try and get some out every week. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. They're linked on my YouTube page as well. So yeah, feel free to come over. And yeah, I just think recovery is very individual. I suppose I would advocate going all in. Go and watch, recovery channels like Tabitha Farrar and What Me Did Next. They're great channels as well, and obviously this one as well, because you guys have some great guests on. But yeah, I don't know. It's so hard, isn't it? It just feels such a big question. But I suppose recovery will. I suppose it will be the best, or potentially the most life enhancing thing you can ever do. I think for me, if I'm going to get through it, and it will be my greatest achievement, because it will just free up, it will just create so much freedom, and it already is. So just go and do it and jump in.
Well, you heard it right there.
Yeah. Use all the resources available.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you guys can go and follow Jo. She's absolutely amazing. Like I say, our links will be down in the description below. And we'll speak to you all in the next one, guys.